Welcome to Real Life and Real Estate. My name is Nikki Robbs and I'm a local real estate agent serving Tacoma, Puyallup, and beyond. And today my special guest, woohoo for having guests, yay, it's Jeremiah McRae with Champion Power Washing. And we're here today to talk about sometimes dreaded, sometimes confusing topic of home exterior maintenance. So welcome, Jeremiah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what your specialty is.
Well, to be short, I wash things, I clean them, and I just make things look decent. And I also go ahead and wash things when things start getting a little bit dirty, like roofs, gutters,
Like roofs, yep.
house siding, concrete, all this stuff. So, yeah.
All right, so roofs, gutters, concrete, patios, siding?
Yeah. So with siding, it's we break it down into kind of like a few, I'd say three main categories. So you have your roof, you have the vertical sides of your house, and then you have the flats that you walk on or that you drive on. So that's the main three different things. So we have our most common services are roof washing, and then we have house washing, which is, or when we're working on a commercial building, we simply just call it commercial exterior washing. It's just fancy words for the vertical surfaces of a building. And then we do concrete, the ground. So driveways, walkways, paper patios, all sorts of things that are around waist level down.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. But you also said you don't do windows.
We do not do squeegee window cleaning. A lot of folks in this industry will. We tend to specialize more. The easiest way to answer is the less you do, the better you are at that one thing. So we like to do that for roof washing, house washing, and ground.
Yeah.
Even like sometimes we have a funny little saying where it's like the neighborhood kid can do concrete, and that's true. For like, if it was a yes or no thing, yes, they can wash your concrete for you.
Yeah.
There's a certain way to do it without turning out looking bad, so it lasts longer. Blah 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 blah. That's still a service that we do. We just leave the window cleaning to a different company that has a specialty system for that.
And I think that's really important because just because I like the way I wash my windows doesn't mean my neighbor likes the way I wash my windows. And so having someone who specializes in windows makes a lot of sense. Like people who specialize at gardening. Thank you for what you do because I don't do that.
Yeah. And so long story short, what I will say about windows is that it requires a specific piece of equipment called a deionizing machine. It pretty much purifies water. That's what it does. It takes all the minerals out of your garden spigot water and it filters them, puts it through a deionization machine, and gets all the hard all the hard sediments, deposits, and anything else that may be in regular tap water, gets all that out and puts that on your window. So let's say if you didn't do that, you run the risk of having hard water spots on your window when you put the brush to it. So that's why they filter the water, put it through the clean brush. That way you're not having a bunch of sand rub up on your window.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
So it's a special piece of equipment. It takes a lot of time, and we just simply
choose not to do that.
Yes.
No big deal. This just isn't the one thing that we do.
Yes.
So now that we're in the fall, I run into a lot of homes that have had deferred maintenance where they just didn't do it or forgot about it for a couple of years, and it actually makes the selling of that home harder because now we have to catch up. So can you give us some advice on things to do in the fall that need our awareness and they need our attention and is really worth your time?
All right. Well, so what I will start by saying is that a lot of reason for that is just because people don't see it.
Yeah. They
just don't see it, and it's a common saying, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So let's say, let's describe the common American day. So let's, wake up, you leave, get in the car, go to work, and you have a good time, or not, who knows?
Hopefully you do.
and then you come home, you're tired, you've done your work, and it's time for you to relax.
Yeah.
Either read a book, do whatever you want to do, or socialize, go out, whatever. You're not thinking about all the things that kind of need attention, and honestly, you shouldn't be worried about most of the stuff most of the time, as long as you take care of it. So things that you see, like you use your garden. You go use your garden hose, you think about your water, you flip on a light switch, you think about your electricity, you turn on the fireplace in the wintertime, you think about your gas. There's a lot of things that you think about when you use them or when it comes into mind. Now, the roof system is just something that we take for granted. And we expect the professionals to do a very good job installing it, which most of the time they do. And most of the time it gets us all the way through what we expect. Now, that is for most climates.
Most.
So we live in a climate and a weather process in the Pacific Northwest that is very wet, a lot of moisture, and especially in the wintertime, not a lot of sunlight. Now, what that environment breeds is a lot of green growth, and the most common form of green growth on roofs is either a moss growth or a green algae of sorts, or what is also commonly is a black algae. That it's a little less able to be seen, but moss is the big issue around here.
It's a lot easier to see something that's green than something that's black.
Yes. Now, the general rule of thumb is that if you see any green and if you see any related thing of growth on your roof system, that means that it's going to start snowballing from there. So let's say if you have, what's really common is that, let's say if you have a little bit of green on this peak of your roof here. So let's say the very front of the house, let's say there's a peak.
Yeah.
Now, I will say if there's going to be any growth whatsoever, it will be probably only in that little 1 foot by 1 foot little area right there in the peak. Lord knows why that happens. It's just where the birds sit. Probably it's where they like to go and eat their nuts or their worms or whatever's hanging out up there. So who knows? But anyways, those spores will spread to the rest of the roof into a place where they can start to take hold, grow the roots, establish the growth, and the more it rains, the more, or I should say, the less sunlight that is in the environment, the more they grow. Instead of absorbing water through roots, they absorb water through their little furs, their little fibers.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it makes moss a sponge, and that is the main issue with moss on the roof, is that it's moisture on a roof that shouldn't be there. And if moisture is on a roof system for a long time, that can start to introduce the possibility of a compromised area. And what I mean by that is that a specific part of the roof where moss can be growing on, what it does is that water can essentially get into the decking that is underneath the shingles, and that causes soft spots and can lead to
and then that leads to a leak or a new roof.
There's a lot of possibilities that can happen, but whenever water touches wood, it's not a good deal. Yeah. So our job is simply just go and clean the roof, make sure it's all good.
Right. So if I'm heading outside in the next couple of days, because we've got really great weather, by the time this airs, I don't know what the weather will be, but it is right now. So if I'm outside just looking at my house because it's gorgeous right now, I'm thinking, oh, where am I going to put the Christmas lights? And I start thinking about who's getting up on the roof. Am I getting up on the roof, or one of the kids getting on the roof? And then how is the lights going to be? Is that also a good time to actually get on the roof and start looking around and like, oh, hey, there's some stuff I didn't expect up there?
Well, what I will say is that if you are getting on a roof,
yes.
As a professional, I will say I do not recommend anybody stand on their own roof without the proper safety equipment, such as a harness or other things.
Good to say it.
Yeah.
Always say it.
But let's say that you want to do your own lights. I do my own lights on the house that I live in. So whoever's going up on the roof, it's not a terrible idea to take the opportunity to look around. So if you're looking at and there is some very basic things to understand about the roof that we can also go and let you know. For example, one of the easiest things to look at the health of your roof is, how are the granules? Do they come off? Do they shake off easily? Do they come off like sand rolling down the hill when you go and put your hand on it, just touch it, a bunch of granules come down? And then there's a whole lot more information that roofers can provide. But long story short, if all the granules on your asphalt, and we're talking about asphalt composite roofing systems here, which are the majority of roofing systems. Yeah, they really are. If all those tiny little rocks, the granules, if all of them are on there and it looks very full and filled up with those granules, the roof's fine. The roof's fine, generally speaking. there is always usually a spot where it's just one or two particular spots that can start to develop soft spots, which is where water is being introduced into the decking in areas that you may not see, and that it has happened on certain situations. But for generally speaking, if you have a lot of granules on the roof, that's a very good indicator of how much life you have left on the roof. If you're starting to see the black patch underneath where the shingles are, if you're starting to see more of those black patches on the shingles, that's a telltale sign that you're going to start to have to think about a roofer in the next year, if not this year.
All right. So if I'm up there, or someone's up there putting up Christmas lights, or maybe they're at the edge and they're looking up the roof at Christmas lights, how do we know we need to call a professional to have it cleaned?
So what I just explained, without doing a too good job of it, was how to tell if your roofing system is just downright just ready to be tossed in the bin.
Yeah, because it's not. What's the difference between when it needs to be replaced and when it needs to be cleaned?
So when it needs to be replaced is when you're just seeing some really, really not normal looks of how the shingle should look. Now,
okay.
What is the much more common thing that's happening with all the roofs around this area at some point in time is that long before you will ever need a new roof, you will have organic green growth of some kind on it, just because
especially here.
That's just the environment we live in.
Yeah.
So let's say we're hanging out up there and we do a little sand scratch and we're fine, but we see just a little bit of green here and there. So general rule of thumb is that if we see any green on the roof, it's time to start thinking about having that roof washed. Generally speaking, it's not a good idea to have any growth of any kind on the roof, because that's moisture on the roof, and those moss roots, even though that they don't draw water, they will eventually expand where they take hold, which is, if we're looking at a roof shingle like this, what happens is that this flap here, this is where they always take the roots, is underneath this flap here. What happens is eventually it expands and it can curl that shingle, and that's how, either through a really wind or rain storm or something like that, that's another way that how water can get introduced through the cause of moss growth. So long story short, the bigger the moss, the bigger the problem. The more moss, the bigger the problem.
All right, so we'll call soon.
Yes, and that's just if you see it in one spot. So if you see it, the really big issue where, now what I will say, I have shown up to some roofs, and I have told folks that are on a little bit of a money crunch. It's like, I'll be honest with them. I'll say, hey, you got some green here, you got some green here.
Yeah.
It's not on on most of the roof. What you will see is that moss will spread to the rest of the roof where it can grow, and it will start to patternize. And when I say patternize, that means that it's starting to follow the outline of each individual shingle. And when that happens, that's you're having active damage done to your roof. When you start to see green growth either underneath the line of each shingle in what's commonly seen as lines, and when it starts getting really bad, it will outline the entire shingle.
Oh my gosh. And
that's, I would say, most folks, they don't let them get to that point, which is good, because that's the point where it's actually causing damage. That's a lot of moisture on the roof, and that's a lot of roots on the roof system as well. And what they also do is the roots, they also dig into the granules, and they pull granules off the roof. So they're also taking life off the roof that way. So in the situation that we see some folks with some moss on the roof, and they're like, okay, is this something we really need to have done? Because we only called you here for a driveway wash, and now you're saying that we're going to need, an expensive roof washing service that we didn't plan for. It's like, okay, I'll be honest with them and say, hey, you probably, based off of the trees, based off of how everything is, I would have this tree trimmed, I would have that trimmed for future. But right now, taking care of your roof system on this house, you probably have X amount more time. Now, that, depending on how bad this is in their environment, they could have they can have, one winter season, they can have maybe 2 years, maybe even 3 years before it really starts becoming an issue. So let's say that your house is smack dab in the middle of the field with no trees anywhere near it. And that chances are you're not going to have much of an issue there. You can probably have a roof wash done, and you can have around anywhere from 3 to 5 years before you start to see any kind of growth activity. You'll probably see some black algae, but you won't see any green growth for a while unless you have some sort of windstorm get leaves on the roof, which is something else that we can also talk about. Which is,
we definitely should. Leaves on the roof. That leads to perfectly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about leaves.
Well, it's the fall season, and leaves come off the trees. Now, moss is great. Moss is wonderful. Moss grows on anything if you give it enough time. But generally speaking, the flatter the roof that you have, the more issues you will have, especially with leaves falling. So let's say if you have a 12-12 roof, you're not going to have too much issues. You're going to have some stuff pile up on it here and there. Like if you have skylights, if you have vents, those are some problem areas that are very common with that. That's just where stuff collects. That's just what happens. But generally speaking, it's in a lot better of a situation. Now, let's say if you have a little bit more of a common roof where you have, 412 or, something a little bit less shallow where it's a lot closer to being flat like that, then it's just a more flat surface where more organics can collect, and it becomes, the water runs off less easily. Therefore, it can stay on the roof longer, feeding the moss growth, and things like leaves can go and collect an amount on the roof surface. Now, let's go ahead and take the worst case scenario and say that, let's say the fall comes, go through the winter, you're your average house in the middle of a subdivision neighborhood where you have, trees in either the front yards or backyards where they're not directly over your house. Maybe they are, but let's just say that they're near your house. Right. They're above the gutter line. Yeah. They're above where the bottom of the roof line is. They're not directly over, but they're next to. So you're probably going to have at least, a handful of leaves on your roof. So if we're going with the worst case scenario here, we're going to leave that all winter long, and that's going to start to decay. Like it's the same thing as letting a pile of leaves in your front yard decay after raking them or something like that. The grass starts to, die from underneath. Yeah. And leaves just eventually start to turn into dirt. Everything turns into dirt eventually, but leaves do it a lot sooner. Yeah. So what that is, it's just added organic matter, a lot heavier, wetter organic matter on the roof and in the gutter system. And it's important to keep your gutter system clear. It's not so much applicable to this environment because it doesn't get so cold to where we have to start worrying about ice dams, which is where gutter freezes, snow melt happens, and it meets the gutter where it freezes, and then it builds ice up on top of the roof and penetrates roof system, introduces water. Yeah, we don't deal with that around here. We only
have like 2 freezes a year.
That's right.
It's
That's
not
right.
a big deal.
So what does happen is that in this worst case scenario situation, a lot of that matter will be exposed to, all of it will be exposed to the elements, and it is subject to being frozen when the temperatures do inevitably drop. Because we don't deal with a lot of snow around here, we deal with mostly just, a few weeks to a month of below freezing temperatures overnight. Yeah. And that's what happens is that matter goes ahead and it freezes to the roof, and because it's water that is in that decaying matter, that expands, and that really loosens up all the granules in that affected area where all that matter is. Not only that, it's just constant moisture sitting on the roof, so it can whenever there's, yes, your roof can handle a rainstorm, it's meant to do that, but when it's hanging out there 24/7 for months on end, you're probably going to notice some issues sooner than later. And it's just really important to keep that system clean going into winter. It's just important to have it clean. So that's what we do.
How often would you suggest the homeowner clean their gutters?
So
I know that depends on a lot of things. Yeah. So just your average suburban
basic,
house
yeah.
in your basic tract neighborhood?
Basic rundown is, I would say, once every spring, once every fall.
Okay.
So that's what I would say for that. At the very minimum, I would say after winter and either after fall or sometime
Okay,
around
so wait for some of the trees to have lost their leaves. Maybe wait for one windstorm to knock them all down and then do it.
Your best bang for the buck is always going to be wait till all the leaves have fallen off
Yeah.
the trees and then have a gutter cleaning done. That's usually what we tell folks is that, hey, if you're going to have the service done, might as well wait another week or so we can get all the leaves out.
So you're coming in on your busy season.
Yeah. Going into the spring, summer months, it's also important to have whatever came down in those rainier, windier months out of that system as well. So we typically see a lot of spring and post-fall cleanings right before it gets cold and just after the winter time is all said and done. Yeah.
I know I don't have any trees near my house, but there's trees in everyone else's yard. And so I get so much blown in that it doesn't even I don't even think about it because they're not my trees. So I don't care. But then my husband will tell me, yeah, gosh, that gutter, we got to do the gutters right now. I'm like, oh, we don't even have trees. But, cedar, pine, fir trees, everything. There's not even a maple tree in sight, but needles and pine cones. And, one good windstorm can bring in stuff from blocks away that I didn't even know there was that tree.
Yeah, and another thing is to be said is that if you have trees that drop year round, like for example, cedar trees or pine trees or stuff like that. I don't know the exact specific tree. It's like some big banana leaf tree or something like that. Some people have those. I'm blanking on the name of it.
Yeah, I can't remember, but something with big leaves.
Yeah, big leaves, and they drop year round. My parents have one. I should know the name of it, but that's fine.
We'll come back and do an update in the spring. It's this tree.
Yeah. But long story short, if you have stuff coming down year round, chances are you already know a lot of that kind of maintenance stuff. Just because, there's probably a point to where you're spending a lot on either landscapers to come by and blow around every few weeks, or what actually a lot of people gets people going on roof related services that they see stuff hanging out of the gutters. Yeah. Just like they either have their gutters overflow in a rainstorm and they can hear it, or it keeps them up at night or something like that, and then they see their gutters are full, or they just see tons of stuff. They can literally see it from the ground starting to spill over the side, and you'll see stuff running down the face of the gutter.
Okay. So that kind of gets my blood boiling a little bit because now I've seen so many houses where the gutter was full, or the gutter wasn't attached properly, or the gutter has pulled away from the house, and now we not only have gutter problems, but we have also damaged the fascia behind it, and now we've got other issues that are wood related, and now it spirals out of control so fast when it could be taken care of with annual and probably biannual maintenance. Yeah.
Long story short, around this environment with anything exterior cleaning related, you're going to want services done either once to twice a year. Yeah. And that's what we see with the majority of all of our clients, is that they, depending on their house, like for example, like if we're talking roof washes, I would say the average would boil down to the realm of once a year. Let's say if you have a entryway to, if you want to keep your concrete clean, you're going to have green or black algae coming back in a span of 12 months. So if you want to keep your concrete clean, you're going to do some sort of maintenance about twice a year to go and keep that thing looking impeccable. Now, everybody's standards for having something washed is different. Yeah. So what we tell people is the majority of it falls around once a year for everything related. Now, of course, it takes a little while, depending on what surface of siding that you have, for that to be washed. Like, for example, you can have stucco siding, which is just, for some reason, it just breeds the black mold on the siding, and it breeds that stuff like crazy. I guarantee you, if you go through stucco is the other stuff. So that's actually funny that I made a mistake, because stucco, it takes a little longer first. It's vinyl I'm talking about.
Oh,
so,
vinyl does the black.
Yeah. So
okay.
So stucco, it does grow
stucco
that.
just looks really dirty really fast.
Yes. So what vinyl does is that if you go into a neighborhood and you have vinyl, if you have a vinyl neighborhood, there will always be at least one or two houses that will just have the dirtiest siding that you can ever imagine. The good news is that it's the easiest to clean, so that helps them out a little bit on cost.
That's good. So that's also a fall maintenance thing.
I would say it's more of like a whenever it kind of happens to happen. The nice thing about siding is that it's not as important as roof maintenance. I would say the majority of things in exterior cleaning is actually mostly aesthetics. It is mostly just it is the feel of being clean. It is the importance of having, a clean presentation. Like, for example, when you have a house go on the market, it needs to look as presentable as possible. So that's where a little bit of the presentation meets functionality. But the absolute important thing that if you can call it important, like for example, plumbers, they're electricians, they're not going out of business anytime soon. Now, the majority of exterior cleaning is kind of like a white glove, kind of like like you can choose to have it. It'd be really nice if you can have it done. The one really functional piece of exterior cleaning would be roof maintenance. Roof and gutter maintenance is the absolute undeniable thing that we need to have.
I think you get the biggest bang for your buck because you're preventing really expensive problems quickly.
So with the few roofers that I have had a conversation with, I've heard prices as low as $20 and an average of $40,000 for a roof system or something like that. And of course, depending on the materials company you go with, that's the typical range that I've personally heard of. And I could be wrong. I don't have too much experience quoting roof. So.
Yeah, me neither.
But that's not something that you just willy-nilly just have in your pocket ready to throw it. So when it comes to when it comes to like things like water damage, that's usually an insurance situation. And sure, you can have you can have roofs go through insurance as well. But what happens is that so this is actually kind of good talk that I'm getting into here, because what we're starting to see more and more of is insurance companies will go ahead and, specifically in wet environments like the Pacific Northwest, they will send out someone to document the current state of the roof surface. So they'll just quickly just see how well you're taking care of your roof system. And let's say if you have like a 15, 20, 25-year plan with your roof or something like that, or if, like, let's just say, let's say if the warranty goes for, I don't know, like if it can go for 15, 25 for, I don't know how long they go for, like 30 years or something like that. Let's say the warranty goes for that long, and that's how long the insurance will cover it for, because it's in warranty. So person comes, takes a picture of the property. Oh, it's got green on it. Take care of the green in 30 days or we drop you.
Yes, I've started hearing that.
And we've been getting a lot of calls about that recently. And good news is it helps people have cleaner roofs, but it's also introducing a big unexpected thing to a lot of homeowners where they're just like, oh, okay, well, we kind of needed to, pay for the kids' soccer. We needed to, we need to eat. We need to do the electricity bill, water, blah, 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 all of our usual stuff. And it's this dollar amount. This is our budget. Yeah. And here we come and find out that we need somehow in the next 30 days, we need to drop something so that we can afford to have this roof wash done, which for the average, and every house is different, but what I will say is the average roof wash for, let's just take a 2-car garage, 2-story home. Okay. Average residential property in the middle of a subdivision can be anywhere from $750 on the lower side to $1,500 on the higher side.
Does that depend on the complexity of the roof design?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So
just like roofers.
Long story short, it's by the job. Everything is by the job, by accessibility, by how much stuff is currently on the roof.
Yeah.
And that right there is for the most common style of roof.
Right. So then we throw something else at you.
So, for example, if we have tile or if we have cedar shake, these are definitely a lot less common. But if we have, metal roofs, this can start to add up a lot quicker because the processes we use are completely different for those kinds of roofs. But generally speaking, 80% of all homes in this area have an asphalt composite roof. And that's typically what we have seen. Most of the roofs cost somewhere in that range. But that being said, if somebody just walked up to you right now and just said, I want $1,500 for this random service, and you're not ready for it.
Yes. I mean, no one likes to be surprised with that.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty much the same thing as like an unexpected thing happening in your car. It's like, okay, well, wasn't ready for this, but it's my livelihood. It's how I make a living, so I kind of need to do this. So it just sucks, and it's this
is your profession though. It's your business.
It's the business, but I mean, if I'm thinking about it from me just kind of hanging out, enjoying some time with my family, and then I'm starting to, a roofing repair is going to cost a lot more. Is like
so
what I'm getting at. Bottom line is that a roofing repair is going to cost a lot more than this, just taking care of your roof. Now, when I
doing the maintenance on your car. Okay, surprise! A timing belt went out. No one planned on that.
No.
But getting that fixed is better than buying a new car.
Yes. So it's important to just put oil in your car. It's important to check your fluids, make sure that they're going off. And my job is to just help people know where to check your fluids.
Yes.
And what it means when it says this.
Right. And if you don't like changing the oil on your own car, because I don't, then you
can pay a professional.
Yeah.
So that is something we have seen with the insurance companies. We've seen a little bit of that, and
overall, that's a good thing for everybody because your roof is going to last longer. It's going to be safer. The insurance company knows that you're being a responsible homeowner. You get to make some money too, and everyone walks away happy.
Yeah.
Maybe a surprise happy, but it's
it's a lot better in the long run. Like when it's the middle of winter, which is when a lot of because it rains more than anything here, especially in the winter months. Summer we've gotten these dry spells here in the past few years, but winter it just comes down. Like come November, it is raining most of the days, and if it's sunny day, it's weird. It's a really, really weird occasion if there's not rain on a day after November. All the way through, might as well be April. I don't know.
We usually get a surprise in February.
Yeah.
Like, the sun came out. It's great.
Fake spring.
Yes.
I think that's what it's called. Fake spring.
Yes. So what about walkways, driveways? What other maintenance can the average homeowner do this fall that will get them ready for winter?
So when it comes to groundwork, that's what we call, knee, waist high down, anything that you can walk on or anything like that. When it comes to groundwork, what we see a lot of is, I won't say for the average, you're going to see a little bit of black algae. You're going to see some moss maybe in the corner, but there will be times where we show up to folks' houses and their concrete is wet, especially when it's wet, it'll be completely turned black with black algae. And that if you've ever walked in a riverbed of any kind, just I know it was random, but let's say that if you go to a stream or some kind or something like that and you walk on these rocks, they're extremely slippery.
Yes.
Now what that is, it's algae, dirt, whatever have you on those rocks, just making them extremely slippery. It's whatever's growing on them. The same thing is happening. It's just there's an organic growth in algae. It's on your rock, on your concrete surface.
Yeah.
Thank God your concrete is flat. If it's on a hill, that's where we start to have a little bit of issues. Or if it's on your stairs, that's where we're starting to have some issues because that is a major slip hazard. And the best way to have it is because it is an organic growth, we can treat it and we can wash it.
Okay.
And when I did mention in the beginning that you can have your neighborhood, kid do it, or you can have a professional do it, one of the main differences is that they're going to pre-treat that concrete. It's a very, very important thing. And even if they do pre-treat it, there's a few different things that, goes into it. But regardless of whoever you have wash concrete, you're going to want to have it pre-treated. And what this is it is a variation of the same solution that we go and use to soft wash a roof. And I'll go and touch on processes here.
We'll have to talk about that in a minute.
I'll go and touch on that. But long story short, it is a chemical pretreatment of the customer's choice, whether it's an industry standard or oxygen-based or another product. But essentially what it's doing, it is killing that algae, it is killing the growth in the area it is applied, it's resetting the ecosystem, the environment of what that solution is applied to, making so that anything that wants to grow back in that area has to completely restart from scratch. So let's compare taking a pressure washer wand, clean area. And then this one, we treat it, kill all of it, and then the two differences is that this one, okay, it's great, it's clean. When it starts to get dirty again sooner because it wasn't treated, all you did was just remove the surface stuff. You didn't kill any of the spores that are hanging out there or in that general environment, so that comes back sooner. What you will see is that you'll see faint lines of where the wand has come back sooner because it likes to follow that specific pattern, because wherever the edges of that tip is, it will go and clean that more so in the middle. That's really, really common with surface cleaners, which is that same fan tip on a rotating bar that spins around in a circle. So whenever you see the pressure washer guys move the disc around, the little round disc, that's all it is. It's a spinning bar with two tips on it that spin in a circle. So when you move this circle and you move it forward, it's cleaning the edges more than the center. So what a lot of folks do when they wash a driveway is they treat it like a lawnmower. We can go shh, and then shh, like that. Great. So it looks all clean. On the day of service, what happens is that the middle of that pass will get stripes. Darker before the edges do, because you clean the edges more.
Interesting.
So how you avoid that, or how we avoid that, is that instead of going one row, we overlap by half of a disc. So if we're coming this way, we will come back over. We'll cover only half instead of coming completely over. We'll come over just half the distance. Yes,
more like vacuuming.
Yeah, so it takes longer, but it ends. So in theory, if that is cleaning the edges more so than the middle, then instead of having edge and then a double clean edge, because we're following up on this one again, so we have a double clean edge right here, and then that is continued because you're coming back over here and doing this one a second time here, so you have all these double edges. Instead, what we're doing is we're coming this way, and you only have a double edge, maybe one every other time, and what it's doing is that you're putting that clean strip in the middle more often, so you're spreading out all the edges through all the passes. And then what we do is that we come back in the other direction in a zigzag form to further blend it. So we technically go over each area 3 times. Now, if somebody asks the question, well, is staying on this area longer taking out more material from my driveway because it's high pressure? The short answer is not anything more than what would usually come out, because we're using a surface cleaner. Now, on exposed aggregate concrete, which is a lot of what driveways are made out of, most common driveway surface around here, it's filler material with concrete, and then you have all your little rocks. Aggregate rocks exposed.
That's mine.
So what happens is that over time, you can go ahead and look at your driveway. Usually there will be a section of the roof that overhangs your driveway, and that strip will be cleaner, and it'll have more of that filler, that more of that cream concrete in between those rocks.
So you're saying just
than the outside.
Life, rain, driving, all those things.
Natural weather process will remove some of that filler out from in between. Now, what happens when we use a surface cleaners, any of those rocks that have been loosened by that process, of course they will go ahead and be removed.
Yeah.
Now this being said, this is a pebble out of maybe 1 in every 1,000.
Right.
That maybe even more. Now, if somebody comes in and uses a turbo nozzle, which is a 0-degree straight shot instead of 2 fan tips spread out closely, it's one stream, the same amount of water, same everything, same pressure.
Right.
Instead of it's being spread out over here, it's one stream and it spins around in a laser beam of death in circles.
Sounds like it would remove a lot more.
It removes a lot more.
Okay.
So you don't want a turbo nozzle. So
Okay.
that's what we do. So we use surface cleaners. So that's how we go and do concrete. So if you're having your concrete pre-treated and then you're having a surface cleaner not just done in lawnmower, which looks great on grass.
Yeah.
We don't want that on our driveway. So that's how you go and correctly clean concrete for the longest lasting, most blending result. And when it does start to get dirty again, which it will,
Yeah.
because that's nature always wins, regardless, is it will come back in a much more even blended pattern. And maybe even you won't even realize it for longer just because, like I'll see it needs a wash, but maybe you won't for another 6 months more. So that way you get another 6 months out of it. And you're like,
awesome.
oh, it started to look green. Okay, now. So that's concrete.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for all the tips today.
Yeah.
So when we spoke earlier, you said you mostly do King County, Pierce County, sort of I-5 corridor, up into the mountains a little bit. So
Yeah.
So if you liked what you've heard today and you're thinking, man, I definitely want someone else to be doing the washing and maintenance on all these different surfaces, then you can contact Jeremiah. I'll have his email in our show notes later. And thank you for educating us, inspiring us, and just really showing us the difference between the neighbor kid doing the work or having a professional do it, and when to call which one, right? The neighbor kid is probably good for watering and mowing and all these kinds of things.
I used to be the neighbor kid.
Oh, so you just grew up and got fancier equipment.
I learned. So
that's how that worked. Great. Is there anything else you want to add or that people should know about you?
Well, bikes are fun.
Woo!
Bikes are always fun. All kinds. Bicycles with motors in them. They're fun. Have 2 dogs and have a very lovely lady. That's I will be married one day. So that's great. But that that's the 5-second spiel about my personal life.
Okay.
So there's that. Yeah, it's a wonderful area out
Awesome.
here. Very, very pretty.
Yeah.
Like it a lot.
So thank you for joining us. Hope we helped remind you, oh yeah, that's a chore I haven't done in a while, or haven't looked at the roof with fresh eyes. So we hope we helped you today. Go out and enjoy the Northwest in October. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. My email and contact information is in the show notes. Have a great day, everybody.